The joint operation began 72 hours after the Galactic Council voted to accept human military assistance. Admiral Morrison commanded the largest fleet in galactic history from the bridge of the EFS Liberty, while human task forces moved into position across 6 star systems simultaneously. The coordination was perfect, with 1,000 ship formations moving as single entities through hyperspace corridors that human engineers had mapped in secret decades earlier. Captain Susan Blake led the tactical wing from the EFS Defiant, her ship bristling with weapons that incorporated alien technology, improved by human innovation. The adaptive shielding systems hummed with power as they prepared to face Krillian quantum disruptors that had torn through every galactic defense. General Pete Collins coordinated logistics from his mobile command center, managing supply lines that stretched across light years with efficiency that amazed alien observers. Dr. Lisa Hayes provided real-time intelligence from her position aboard the Liberty, her analysis of Krillian psychology and tactics giving human forces advantages that Queen General Vexenara could never have anticipated. The first engagement occurred in the Altair Secundus system, where Krillian forces were consolidating their recent conquests. Human ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their stealth systems allowing them to achieve complete tactical surprise. The Krillian fleet was caught between planets while loading prisoners and resources onto transport vessels. Admiral Morrison gave the attack order with calm precision that spoke of decades of preparation for exactly this moment. The human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Phase-shift cannons fired beams that passed through Krillian shields as if they did not exist, striking hull armor with devastating effect. Adaptive shielding countered quantum disruptor attacks, absorbing energy that had previously been unstoppable and redirecting it back at enemy vessels. Most impressive were the tactical coordination systems that allowed human ships to anticipate Krillian movements before they occurred. Queen General Vexenara watched her carefully planned formations crumble under the human assault from her flagship, deep in Krillian space. Her quantum disruptors, which had made her fleets invincible against galactic forces, proved completely ineffective against human adaptive shielding. The weapons that had conquered 3 star systems in days were suddenly useless against opponents who seemed to know her tactical doctrine better than her own officers. Her tactical computers could not explain how human ships moved with such precision, or how they anticipated Krillian maneuvers before orders were given. The insectoid crews reported impossible human capabilities that suggested technology centuries beyond anything the hegemony possessed. Worst of all was the systematic way human forces dismantled her advance, liberating conquered systems with overwhelming efficiency, while minimizing civilian casualties. The second phase of the operation targeted Krillian supply lines and communication networks. Captain Blake led her tactical wing in strikes against infrastructure that the hegemony had considered perfectly protected. Human intelligence had identified every strategic bottleneck, every command center, and every logistics hub that supported the Krillian war machine. The attacks were precise and devastating, cutting off forward units from reinforcement while leaving civilian populations unharmed. Dr. Hayes provided psychological analysis that allowed human commanders to predict Krillian responses with uncanny accuracy. Her understanding of insectoid hive mentality revealed strategic weaknesses that Queen General Vexenara had never recognized in her own forces. When communication networks failed and supply lines collapsed, Krillian units began operating independently without coordination, making them vulnerable to human tactical superiority. On Kepler Prime Station, Ambassador Zethkari watched tactical displays with growing amazement and unease. The human forces were not simply winning the war against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. They were demonstrating technological and tactical capabilities that redefined what was possible in galactic warfare. The precision of their operations, the effectiveness of their weapons, and the overwhelming nature of their victory suggested that humanity could have ended any galactic conflict whenever they chose. The Altarian survivors rescued from Krillian prison camps wept with joy as human medical teams provided care using technology that surpassed Altarian capabilities despite their reputation as the galaxy's finest healers. The crystalline Zephyrians chimed in harmonics of awe as human engineers repaired infrastructure damage in days rather than months. Even the tree-like Verdani swayed with what could only be described as reverence for human efficiency and power. The final battle occurred at Krillios Prime, the heavily fortified heart of the Krillian hegemony. Queen General Vexenara had gathered her remaining fleets around her homeworld, preparing for a desperate last stand using fixed defenses that had protected Krillian space for centuries. The orbital fortresses mounted quantum disruptors powerful enough to crack planets, while defensive minefields stretched across entire solar systems. Admiral Morrison approached the Krillian stronghold with methodical patience, his forces moving through defensive networks that human intelligence had mapped completely. The battle was brief and decisive, with human weapons proving capable of neutralizing fixed defenses that had been considered impregnable. The adaptive shielding protected human ships from the most powerful Krillian weapons, while phase-shift cannons destroyed fortifications from impossible ranges. When Queen General Vexenara realized that further resistance would only result in the complete destruction of her species, she transmitted her unconditional surrender directly to Admiral Morrison aboard the Liberty. The surrender included the release of all prisoners, the withdrawal of Krillian forces from occupied territories, and the dismantling of quantum disruptor production facilities. The Krillian War that had threatened to consume the galaxy ended not through years of grinding conflict, but through humanity's overwhelming demonstration of military superiority. As the 1,000 human warships prepared to return to their hidden bases throughout the galaxy, Admiral Morrison addressed the Galactic Council one final time from the bridge of the Liberty. His words were diplomatic but carried undertones that no delegate could mistake. Humanity had no desire to conquer or control galactic civilization, but they would respond decisively to any threats against the peace that allowed all species to flourish. The message was clear to every listening species. The galaxy now had protectors who possessed the power to enforce their protection. The age of galactic warfare was ending because humanity had arrived with capabilities that made conventional military conflict obsolete. Ambassador Zethkari realized that 50 years of silence had carried a price that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. While other species attended meetings and debated policies, humanity had built the most powerful military force in galactic history. They had watched, learned, and prepared while remaining completely hidden from detection. When they finally chose to reveal themselves, they had done so not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as the dominant power that would reshape galactic order according to their vision of peace and stability. The docking bay of Kepler Prime Station had never hosted anything like the human shuttle that glided silently through the energy barriers. The craft was sleek and angular, built with technology that made galactic engineers weep with envy. Its hull reflected light in ways that suggested metamaterial construction, decades ahead of anything the Council species possessed. As the shuttle touched down with barely a whisper, Ambassador Zethkari waited with a delegation of senior council members. Her blue hands trembled slightly as she prepared to meet the beings she had been trying to contact for over 50 years. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss, revealing 5 humans in dark blue uniforms that spoke of military precision and advanced manufacturing. Admiral Jake Morrison stepped forward first, his gray hair and confident bearing commanding immediate respect. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Hayes with her intelligent eyes and tablet full of data that would shock the galaxy. General Pete Collins moved with the controlled grace of a career soldier, while Captain Susan Blake represented the new generation of human space officers. The final member of the delegation carried equipment that registered as completely unknown on galactic sensors. Ambassador Zethkari stepped forward to perform the first official diplomatic contact between humanity and the Galactic Council. Her voice caught slightly as she spoke the ceremonial words of welcome that she had practiced for decades. Admiral Morrison responded with perfect galactic standard pronunciation, his words carrying the weight of 50 years of preparation. The formal greeting completed, the human delegation followed Zethkari toward the council chambers through corridors lined with curious alien observers. The other humans studied everything with professional interest, clearly analyzing defensive positions, structural integrity, and tactical considerations. Dr. Hayes made notes on her tablet while General Collins assessed security protocols with the eye of someone planning either attack or defense. Captain Blake recorded everything with sensors built into her uniform. The galactic species that lined the corridors represented every major civilization in known space. The Silver Altarians watched with desperate hope, knowing that their people were dying while politicians debated. The tree-like Verdani swayed with curiosity about these mysterious newcomers. The crystalline Zephyrians chimed in frequencies that suggested amazement, mixed with apprehension. Even the aquatic deep swimmers had left their environmental tanks to observe this historic moment. As the delegation reached the council chambers, Admiral Morrison paused to address the assembled aliens. His voice carried easily through the vast space as he apologized for humanity's prolonged absence from galactic affairs. The words were diplomatic but carried an undertone that suggested Earth had chosen to remain hidden rather than being unable to participate. Dr. Hayes activated her tablet, and holographic displays filled the chamber with detailed intelligence on 17 different galactic species. The information was comprehensive beyond anything the Council possessed about themselves. Human observers had mapped territorial boundaries, analyzed technological capabilities, studied cultural practices, and documented political structures with precision that stunned the assembled delegates. The displays showed trade routes, military installations, diplomatic relationships, and resource distribution across thousands of star systems. Representative Kael'thor of the Altarians stood with his silver face pale with shock. The humans knew more about Altarian colony defenses than most Altarian military commanders. They had identified strategic weaknesses, supply bottlenecks, and evacuation routes with accuracy that suggested decades of detailed observation. The crystalline Zephyrians chimed in harmonics of disbelief as their most secret research facilities appeared on human intelligence maps. Ambassador Zethkari struggled to maintain her composure as the scope of human knowledge became clear. These beings had been watching everything while the galaxy assumed they were primitive or extinct. Every diplomatic message, every trade negotiation, every military exercise had been monitored and analyzed by human intelligence services. The council members had been playing cards while their opponents could see every hand. Admiral Morrison continued his presentation with calm professionalism, explaining that humanity had chosen observation over participation to better understand galactic civilization before making contact. The decision had proven wise, as current events demonstrated the need for careful preparation in an often dangerous universe. Dr. Hayes provided cultural analysis that revealed understanding of alien psychology deeper than most species possessed about themselves. General Collins presented military assessments that showed human knowledge of galactic defense capabilities exceeded that of the species who owned those capabilities. The most shocking revelation came when Captain Blake outlined human technological achievements. The displays showed manufacturing capabilities, scientific advances, and military innovations that surpassed galactic standards by generations. Human adaptive shielding could counter any known weapon system. Their quantum dampening technology made ships completely invisible to galactic sensors. Most disturbing were the tactical coordination systems that allowed human fleets to operate with precision that approached prescience. Ambassador Zethkari asked the question that weighed on every delegate's mind about how long humanity had been capable of interstellar travel. Admiral Morrison's answer sent shockwaves through the chamber as he revealed that human ships had been exploring the galaxy for over 60 years. The implications were staggering, as it meant humans had achieved spaceflight before some council species had developed advanced metallurgy. The revelation that humanity was not asking to join galactic civilization, but offering to protect it changed everything. General Collins presented tactical analysis of the Krillian advance that demonstrated human understanding of quantum disruptor technology exceeded that of species who had been fighting the weapons for weeks. Captain Blake outlined proposed joint operations that could halt the Krillian expansion within days, rather than months. Dr. Hayes provided psychological profiles of Queen General Vexnara that revealed strategic weaknesses the Council had never identified. The human delegation made it clear that they were not seeking membership in the Galactic Council as junior partners. They were offering their services as the dominant military power that could end the current crisis through overwhelming technological superiority. The choice facing the galaxy was simple: accept human protection or watch Krillian forces continue their expansion across civilized space. As Admiral Morrison concluded his presentation, the council chamber sat in stunned silence. The beings they had tried to contact for 50 years had revealed themselves as the most advanced civilization in galactic history. They possessed intelligence networks that spanned known space, military technology that made galactic defenses obsolete, and strategic capabilities that could reshape the balance of power overnight. Ambassador Zethkari realized that her diplomatic career had just reached its ultimate success and failure simultaneously. She had finally made contact with the humans from Earth, but they had made it clear that the galaxy needed them far more than they needed the galaxy. Ambassador Zethkari stood at the Emergency Council podium, with trembling hands as delegates shouted over each other in 17 different languages. The Krillian advance had continued for 3 days without pause, and no galactic force had been able to slow their progress. 4 more Altarian colonies had fallen to the quantum disruptor weapons that tore through every known defense. The silver-skinned Altarians wept openly while their military commanders reported the systematic destruction of their fleet elements. Queen General Vexnara seemed unstoppable. Her insectoid forces moved with mechanical precision, conquering star systems faster than the Galactic Council could coordinate any response. Traditional weapons proved useless against Krillian shielding, while their quantum disruptors phased through every protective barrier the galaxy possessed. The council chamber had become a place of desperation and fear. Zethkari called for order while delegates argued about military intervention, diplomatic solutions, and evacuation procedures. The Verdani swayed their massive forms in distress while the crystalline Zephyrians chimed in harmonics of panic. Even the normally calm deep swimmers bubbled frantically in their environmental tanks. No one had experienced warfare on this scale in living memory. Then everything changed in a single moment. The emergency session was interrupted by a transmission that came from nowhere, broadcast simultaneously on every galactic communication frequency. The signal was strong, clear, and originated from the Sol system where the mysterious humans were supposed to live. Every delegate in the chamber fell silent as an alien voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. The transmission was brief and formal, containing no threats or demands. Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Federation simply announced that Earth had been monitoring galactic communications for 50 years and was ready to participate in council proceedings. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Ambassador Zethkari gripped the podium to keep from falling as the implications crashed over her. The humans had been listening all along. Every diplomatic invitation, every council session, every private communication between species had been monitored by these mysterious beings from Earth. The silence that the galaxy had interpreted as primitive ignorance was actually sophisticated intelligence gathering. The delegates sat in stunned shock as Admiral Morrison continued his brief message. The Terran Federation requested permission to attend the emergency council session to discuss the current crisis. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting point near Kepler Prime Station. Human representatives would arrive within 18 hours to participate in galactic diplomacy for the first time in recorded history. The chamber remained silent for long minutes after the transmission ended. Zethkari struggled to process what she had heard while delegates whispered to each other in confusion and amazement. The humans were spacefaring. They had been watching the galaxy for decades. They knew about the Krillian crisis and wanted to help. But how advanced were they? What kind of civilization had been hiding in the Sol system? While the galaxy assumed they were primitive or extinct. Representative Kyle Thor of the Altarians was the first to speak, his silver face wet with tears of hope rather than despair. His people were dying while the council debated, and any offer of assistance was welcome. The Verdani began swaying in what could only be described as cautious optimism. Even the normally suspicious Krillian observers seemed stunned by the revelation that Earth had been monitoring them. Ambassador Zethkari formally responded to the human transmission, granting permission for Terran representatives to attend the emergency session. Her voice shook as she spoke the words she had dreamed of saying for 50 years. The Galactic Council officially welcomed humanity to participate in interstellar diplomacy. But even as she spoke, questions raced through her mind about what kind of beings were finally answering her calls. The next 18 hours passed in tense anticipation. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching Kepler Prime Station from the direction of human space. The readings were unlike anything in galactic databases. The propulsion technology appeared more advanced than anything the Council species possessed. Multiple contacts suggested that Earth was sending more than a simple diplomatic vessel. Station Commander Alex Carter monitored the approaching fleet with growing amazement and concern. The energy signatures were enormous, indicating ships much larger than typical galactic vessels. The formation was precise and coordinated in ways that suggested advanced tactical computers and experienced crews. Most disturbing was the obvious military nature of the approaching force. These were not civilian diplomatic ships. They were warships of unknown capability and design. As the human fleet approached the sensor perimeter of Kepler Prime, the true scope of their arrival became clear. 1,000 separate contacts appeared on tactical displays, each representing a vessel larger than most galactic cruisers. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers of space, organized with mathematical precision that spoke of decades of military preparation. The lead vessel was particularly massive, easily dwarfing the largest council ships ever constructed. Commander Carter struggled to process the tactical readings as human vessels took positions around Kepler Prime Station. The formation was clearly defensive, designed to protect the station and demonstrate overwhelming force without appearing directly threatening. The humans had arrived not as supplicants seeking membership, but as a military power making their debut on the galactic stage. The lead vessel transmitted a formal request for docking permission, identifying itself as the EFS Liberty, under the command of Admiral Morrison. The massive ship was over 1 kilometer long and bristled with weapon systems that galactic databases could not identify. Its shielding technology registered as completely unknown, suggesting that human defensive capabilities were generations ahead of galactic standards. In the council chamber, delegates watched tactical displays with growing amazement and unease. The humans had not simply revealed themselves as a spacefaring civilization. They had announced their presence with the largest military fleet in recorded galactic history. Ambassador Zethkari realized that her 50 years of diplomatic invitations had finally been answered, but not in any way she had imagined. The mysterious humans from Earth had been preparing for this moment while the galaxy assumed they were primitive. They had watched, learned, and built military capabilities that made every other species seem like children playing with toys. As the massive human flagship requested permission to dock, Zethkari understood that the balance of galactic power had just shifted forever. The humans were not joining the galactic community as junior members seeking guidance. They were announcing themselves as the dominant military force that the galaxy never knew existed. The age of human isolation was ending, and nothing would ever be the same. The emergency alarms echoed through Kepler Prime Station as reports flooded in from the outer systems. Ambassador Zethkari ran through the corridors toward the emergency council chamber, her blue skin pale with shock. The news was impossible to believe, but the evidence kept coming from multiple sources. The Krillian hegemony had launched simultaneous attacks on 3 Altarian colonies without warning or declaration of war. The peaceful galaxy that had known 5 decades of stability was suddenly burning. In the emergency chamber, delegates gathered in chaos and confusion. The silver-skinned Altarians wept openly as their representatives received casualty reports from their homeworlds. Queen General Vexnara of the Krillians had struck during the night cycle, when most colonists were sleeping. Her insectoid fleets had emerged from hyperspace using new stealth technology that bypassed all detection systems. The first the colonies knew of the attack was when quantum disruptor beams began tearing through their planetary shields. The weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Traditional energy shields that had protected civilizations for centuries proved useless against the Krillian quantum disruptors. The beams phased through protective barriers as if they did not exist, striking cities and infrastructure with devastating effect. 3 entire star systems had fallen in less than 12 hours. Millions of Altarians were dead or missing. The survivors spoke of impossible weapons and tactical precision that suggested years of secret preparation. Ambassador Zethkari called for order as the chamber filled with panicked voices. The Verdani swayed their massive tree-like forms in distress. The crystalline Zephyrians chimed in harmonics of fear and anger. Even the normally calm aquatic deep swimmers bubbled with agitation in their environmental tanks. No one had expected war to return to the galaxy. The Galactic Council had no standing military force because individual species maintained their own defense fleets. But those fleets were designed for patrol duties and minor conflicts, not major warfare. The Krillian military technology appeared to be generations ahead of anything other species possessed. Representative Kael'thor of the Altarians stood with tears streaming down his silver face. His people were known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and advanced medicine. They had never maintained large military forces because they believed diplomacy could solve any conflict. Now they were paying the price for that optimism. The Krillian assault had targeted civilian populations specifically, destroying hospitals and schools before military installations. It was systematic genocide disguised as territorial expansion. The council chamber erupted in arguments about response options. Some delegates called for immediate military intervention, while others urged diplomatic solutions. The problem was that nobody understood why the Krillians had attacked or what they hoped to achieve. Queen General Vexnara had cut all diplomatic communications before launching her assault. Her fleets were advancing deeper into Altarian space while the council debated. Meanwhile, 12 light-years away, Captain Ben Torres watched the Krillian advance from his hidden position in the Tau Ceti Nebula. His ship, the Vigilant, was one of 50 human vessels scattered throughout the galaxy on long-term observation missions. The Vigilant was completely invisible to alien sensors thanks to quantum dampening technology that had taken 20 years to perfect. Torres and his crew had been monitoring Krillian military activities for the past 8 months. They had detected the unusual fleet buildups and weapon testing, but had not predicted an actual attack. Human intelligence networks had identified the Krillians as potentially dangerous years ago, but the insectoid species had seemed content with their own territory. Torres recorded everything as Krillian dreadnoughts passed within 1,000 kilometers of his position. The alien ships were massive, heavily armored vessels bristling with the new quantum disruptor weapons. Their formation flying was precise and coordinated in ways that suggested advanced tactical computers. Most disturbing was their obvious confidence. The Krillians were not acting like a species making a desperate gamble. They moved like conquerors who expected easy victory. The Vigilant's passive sensors analyzed weapon signatures, shield frequencies, and propulsion systems while staying completely undetected. All data was automatically transmitted to Earth using tachyon burst communications that traveled faster than light. Human intelligence analysts would have complete technical specifications of Krillian military capabilities within hours. Back on Earth, the Solar Defense Council convened an emergency session deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. President Carol Martinez chaired the meeting from her secure bunker while military leaders participated via encrypted communications. The room filled with tension as Admiral Morrison presented his analysis of the Krillian attacks. The alien assault represented exactly the kind of galactic crisis that human planners had prepared for decades to handle. Dr. Lisa Hayes provided detailed intelligence on Krillian military capabilities and strategic objectives. Her analysis suggested that the insectoid species was testing galactic response times and military coordination. If other species proved unable to mount effective resistance, the Krillians would likely expand their attacks to additional targets. The quantum disruptor technology gave them an overwhelming advantage against conventional galactic defenses. General Pete Collins outlined human military assets available for potential intervention. The secret fleet had been built specifically to handle threats that civilian galactic forces could not manage. Human warships incorporated alien technologies improved by human engineering and tactical innovation. They possessed weapons and defenses that could counter Krillian quantum disruptors, but revealing them would expose decades of secret preparation. President Martinez faced an impossible decision. Intervention would save Altarian lives and prevent further Krillian expansion, but it would also reveal that humanity had been deceiving the galaxy for 50 years. The secret observation program would become public knowledge. Earth would no longer be able to gather intelligence from the shadows. The political consequences could be devastating if other species viewed human secrecy as hostile deception, but allowing the Krillian assault to continue was equally unacceptable. Admiral Morrison presented intelligence reports suggesting that Krillian scouts had been detected near the outer edges of human territory. If Queen General Vexnara succeeded in conquering Altarian space, she would eventually turn her attention to other targets. Earth would become a priority once the Krillians realized that humans possessed advanced spacefaring capabilities. The meeting continued for hours as political and military leaders weighed options. Outside their secure facilities, the civilian population remained unaware that their planet stood at a crossroads. The decision made in the next few hours would determine whether humanity continued hiding in the shadows or stepped forward to claim their place as a galactic power. The bright blue lights of Kepler Prime Station filled the massive council chamber, as Ambassador Zethkari stood at the center podium for what felt like the 1,000th time. Her blue skin showed the stress lines that came from decades of diplomatic failure. Around her sat representatives from 17 different species, each more frustrated than the last. The monthly Galactic Council meeting was about to begin, and once again Earth would be absent. The human delegation chair sat empty, just as it had for 52 years, 3 months and 14 days. Zethkari had been counting. She cleared her throat and began the ritual that had become her burden. The other delegates shifted in their seats, knowing what was coming. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others showed their annoyance openly. The Altarians, with their silver skin and large eyes, watched with sympathy. The insect-like Krillians clicked their mandibles in obvious irritation. Even the peaceful tree-like Verdani swayed with what could only be described as impatience. Zethkari had volunteered for this assignment when she was young and optimistic. She thought she could make contact with the mysterious humans who lived on the third planet from their sun. That was before she understood the true nature of her task. Every month she sent the same diplomatic invitation. Every month silence came back. The quantum communication channels that connected every civilized world in the galaxy carried thousands of messages daily. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific discoveries, and simple conversations flowed between worlds in an endless stream. But from Earth, nothing. Not even an acknowledgement that the messages were received. The Council had debated this problem for decades. Some members believed humans were too primitive to understand the communications. Others suggested they might be extinct, killed by war or disease or environmental collapse. A few radical voices proposed that humans were simply hostile and chose to ignore the galaxy. But most delegates had given up caring. They attended these meetings out of duty, not hope. Meanwhile, 9,000 light-years away on Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The underwater facility had been built in secret, hidden from civilian governments and alien censors alike. Morrison was 45 years old with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Terran Defense Force, an organization that officially did not exist. On his desk lay the latest batch of alien communications, all perfectly translated and analyzed. Dr. Lisa Hayes knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She was 38 and brilliant, with brown hair pulled back in a practical style. She carried a tablet full of xenolinguistic analysis and intercept data. Hayes had learned 17 alien languages and could decode their cultural nuances better than most of their own diplomats. She understood their hopes, fears, and political structures in ways that would have shocked the Galactic Council. Morrison looked up from his reading as Hayes approached his desk. The latest diplomatic invitation from Ambassador Zethkari lay open before him, printed on old-fashioned paper. The translation was perfect, every formal phrase and cultural courtesy preserved. The aliens still believed they were trying to contact a pre-space civilization. They had no idea that humans had been traveling between stars for over 60 years. The early human explorers had discovered alien civilizations by accident. A deep space probe in 2157 had detected artificial signals from the Tau Ceti system. Instead of announcing the discovery, the Earth governments had classified everything. Military leaders convinced world leaders that humanity needed to learn about these aliens before revealing themselves. That decision had shaped everything that followed. While the Galactic Council sent invitations and waited for responses, human ships watched from the shadows. Stealth technology developed for submarine warfare proved equally effective in space. Human vessels could observe alien fleets, monitor their communications, and map their territories without being detected. Earth had built the most comprehensive intelligence network in galactic history, and their targets never knew they existed. Hayes sat down across from Morrison and activated her tablet. The screen showed real-time monitoring data from across the galaxy. Human observation posts tracked ships, recorded conversations, and analyzed political developments on dozens of worlds. The intelligence-gathering operation employed thousands of people and cost more than most planetary defense budgets. But it gave humanity something invaluable: knowledge. Morrison studied the latest reports while Hayes waited. The Altarians were developing new shield technology. The Verdani had discovered a mineral-rich system and were planning expansion. The Krillians were building military vessels at an unusual rate, though their purpose remained unclear. Every piece of information was cataloged, analyzed, and added to humanity's growing database of galactic intelligence. General Pete Collins entered the office carrying his own reports. He was 52 with short black hair and the bearing of a career military officer. Collins commanded the orbital defense networks that surrounded Earth and her colonies. His forces included warships that incorporated the best alien technologies, improved by human engineering. The ships existed in complete secrecy, hidden in asteroid fields and dark nebulae throughout human space. Collins updated Morrison on fleet readiness, while Hayes provided cultural analysis of recent alien diplomatic exchanges. The three officers represented different aspects of humanity's secret preparation. Morrison handled overall strategy and intelligence. Hayes managed linguistic analysis and cultural understanding. Collins commanded the military forces that would protect humanity when their isolation finally ended. They had worked together for 15 years, building the framework that would determine humanity's future among the stars. Outside their underwater facility, civilian life continued normally. People went to work, attended schools, and lived their lives without knowing that their planet was surrounded by alien civilizations. The secret had been kept through careful compartmentalization and strict security protocols. Even most government leaders knew only fragments of the truth. The full scope of alien contact was restricted to a small group of military and intelligence officials. Morrison closed the latest diplomatic invitation and looked at his colleagues. Hayes and Collins waited for his decision, as they had countless times before. The monthly ritual would continue unchanged. Earth would remain silent, and Ambassador Zethkari would face another diplomatic failure. The Galactic Council would debate and wonder and eventually move on to other business. But in the deep facilities beneath Earth's oceans, humanity continued preparing for the day when silence would no longer serve their interests. They watched, learned, and built strength while the galaxy assumed they were primitive or extinct. The greatest intelligence operation in history continued, hidden behind a mask of apparent ignorance.